person. As Prime Minister, I will establish and chair a cabinet-level committee tasked with ensuring that all government decisions respect your treaty rights, your inherent rights, and Canada's international obligations, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Here in Alberta, Rachel Notley has shown that her NDP government will respect the UN Declaration. We will do the same for the entire country. Our commitments are based on meaningful, concrete steps that will improve life in your community. Full legacy of underfunding by Liberal and Conservative governments. An NDP government will also uphold the Crown's duty to consult Indigenous peoples on every decision that may impact you. That is a sacred responsibility based on the treaties and our historical obligations. Successive Conservative and Liberal governments, we find ourselves at the very same point, and with a greater need for reconciliation than ever before. In this election, there's a choice to make. This time, across the country, Canadians are ready for change and ready to vote for the NDP. I think what we're talking about is a new era. An era where we have a nation-to-nation relationship, a respectful one, with recognition of your rights. Far more importantly, it will be government to government, and it can be done. When the courts shut down the James Bay project in Quebec because they had not respected the rights of the First People, it wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts that the Quebec government changed attitude. They understood that it was an economic priority. Been 100 court cases in a row where First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people have won in the courts. Yet Mr. Harper keeps throwing more money at fighting you in the courts. What I'm saying is this: the numbers that I've given you here today are the beginning of a new era. You spoke to me from your heart, and when I'm speaking to you, it's from the heart. And someone gave me something very important at a little meeting that we had before, and he told me to put it on my heart as I was speaking to you. This, for me, is a top priority. I said to you that there's no issue on which I've held more meetings, and I would dare say to you that, in fact, I've held more meetings on First Nations, Inuit, and Métis questions across the country than all other issues combined, but it's easy to understand why. It's not only about getting things right for the future for your children and your communities, but that's the top thing. It's also about doing the right thing historically, and it's also about the future of the country. Because we can't keep going at it this way. It's fruitless. It brings us down a path to failure if we continue with what the Conservatives and Liberals have done for 148 years. So in this election, there's hope for a new era, a different approach. That's why I'm proud to have Romeo Saganash and Jonathan Genet-Jourdain with me, and that's why I'm so proud to have 22 representatives of your communities from across the country who will be there to guide us to get to a different Canada and stop having two Canadas, having one where you are respected as a nation in that relationship, nation to nation. This is a clear commitment to you and your generation and the future generations. And I'm glad to see you here and at the microphone. We're going to repair the damage that Mr. Harper has done. Some of the damage directly to the environment is going to be the toughest thing to do. But we have to start assuming the obligations in this generation for the pollution we create. Those are basic principles of sustainable development: polluter pay, user pay, internalizing the costs. And none of that is going to take place without you being at the table, you and your generation, having your word. That's what it is when we talk about a respectful nation-to-nation approach. It's not somebody telling you what the decision that was just taken in Ottawa. It's being there. And I'll end by saying Catherine and I, at the end of we did a listening tour across the country, and we brought everyone on the 250th anniversary of the Royal Proclamation of 1763. We brought them to Stornoway, and we opened the doors, and people were so kind, and they came, the people that we had met across the country. And I want to open the doors to 24 Sussex. I want to let you know that the Prime Minister's office in Longueuil is always going to be open. The work is going to continue, but you're going to have somebody in that job who believes in you. There are more than 50 ridings across the country where First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people can have a determining effect on the result. And as I read to you from the United Nations Declaration, you don't have to sacrifice anything. You make that decision whether or not you participate in this election. But just know that you could be determining the result. The people in this room today and the nations they represent can be, for the first time in Canadian history, determining the result of the next federal election. And I hope that you will give me your confidence to get to that nation-to-nation approach. Thank you. And I tell you that my presence here today is the reflection of almost 4 years of constant hard work in a file that is a humbling experience. Listening to you speak today about the successive failures and the betrayals and why you were told correctly not to trust people like me. But I'll tell you something different today. I'll tell you that in the government that we plan to form on October 19th at the cabinet level, we're going to have a committee that I'm going to chair that has 3 things to do to make sure that we respect your treaty rights, your inherent rights, and Canada's international obligations. Just so you know, before I came in here today, I had a prayer ceremony with a lot of your elders and smudging, and that, for me, locks me into you. We're going to get it done. Thank you. When we talk about the children, we remember the apology for the residential school tragedy, which was an attempt at cultural genocide. But let's remember why we apologized. Because the very next thing that Mr. Harper did was try to shove his own view of education down your throats. That's not going to work. So you're never going to get that from me. Why can you trust us? Well, I'm going right back to the elder who spoke before. For 148 years, you've been told that you have no choice. When you get tired of the Liberal scandals and the sponsorship, you go to the Conservatives. When you get tired of the Senate scandal, you have, hold on. This time, for the first time in Canadian history, there is another option. There's another choice. The NDP has a real chance of forming a government on October 19th. And what I can tell you is what's in my heart. That after nearly 4 years traveling the country from coast to coast to coast, I now know how much I don't know about the issues in this room. But I do know that I have every intention of listening to you and starting to get to solutions. That's all I can promise, to be there for you constantly, every step of the way. And my door was open, not because it was an obligation, but it was an understanding that this is something historical that has to be fixed. And that's what I can promise you that I will do. Thank you.
It is emotional, Katie. It's emotional for Catherine and when you're in Iqaluit and you know that there's an 11-year-old child who took his own life because he sensed that there was no hope. It's your job to give hope. And that's what this is about. There's no issue on which I've spent more time or held more meetings since becoming leader of the official opposition. I'm going to get it done. That's what an NDP government will do differently from 148 years of failure by successive Conservative and Liberal. I remember being at a sunrise ceremony on Victoria Island near Ottawa a couple of years ago. I mean, we were out there first thing in the morning simply because I wanted to show respect. This is about the 3 R's: respect, reconciliation, and recognition. And that's what has to change. I guess you could add a 4th R, which is the relationship. The relationship itself is broken. And it's a humbling experience because you learn so much going across the country on these issues. In BC, almost total absence of treaties, completely different perspective on how you have to get to solutions. And yet they're doing quite well in BC on education issues, better than most. Quebec, nation to nation, born out of the shutting down of the James Bay project, rushing in to make sure that resource development could be done. And it was found by everyone, successive governments, that a respectful nation to nation approach was the best way to do it. So you have to pick up from those experiences, use the best things that are available. But Catherine and I traveled for the whole summer in 2013 on what we were calling a listening tour. And boy, do you listen and do you learn. And so I come at this with the deep conviction that we can repair that relationship with our First Peoples, and it starts with recognizing that it has to be nation to nation. We're going to put a lot of detail around that, but one of the concrete things that I have promised to do, that I will do, there will be a committee at the cabinet level that I will personally chair that will make sure that every single decision of our government will respect treaty rights, inherent rights, and Canada's international obligations. And Romeo Saganash, who wrote part of the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People, is going to be beside me to make sure we do just that every step of the way.
Last question.